Kilgore, Texas, is a small town about 2 hours east of Dallas. However, this isn't just any small town. A quick drive around town will reveal something quite extraordinary. That is, the high concentration of oil derricks in this town. Welcome to the world's richest acre. In my previous video about the Million Barrel Museum in Monahans, Texas, I went a little bit into the oil industry in Texas. However, in that video, I focused on the oil industry in West Texas, in the Permian Basin, around the cities of Midland and Odessa. This video is about the oil in East Texas, which also has a rich history, centering around the city of Kilgore. The East Texas oil field was discovered in 1930 by Columbus Marion Joyner, or C.M. Joyner, often just referred to by his nickname, Dad. Joyner was a wildcat prospector, meaning that he was an independent driller. Born in Alabama in 1860, he established a law practice, without a law degree, in Tennessee in 1883. After being elected into the Tennessee House of Representatives in 1889 and serving just one term, he moved to Oklahoma to begin a search for oil. There, he befriended a physician and amateur geologist, A.D. Doc Lloyd, and they dug wells in Oklahoma, with some success. Joyner had purchased and surveyed some leases in northwestern Rusk County in 1919, but would not return until 1925. Rusk County contains parts of southern Kilgore and is just south of Gregg County, where most of Kilgore resides. According to Joyner, he had a dream in which he envisioned a landscape in East Texas where he would find oil. After awakening from his dream, he sketched the details of the location and set out to make his fortune. Joyner's dream took him to the farm of widow Daisy Bradford, the great-granddaughter of Andrew Miller, who purchased the land in 1848. Consequently, the farm was commonly referred to as the Miller Farm. Daisy's farm covered an area of 975 acres, 875 acres which she leased to Joyner for his endeavors. Joyner explained to Daisy in a letter, "There are millions of dollars in wealth that will only have to be penetrated with a drill bit when it will burst forth with a golden flow that will make every landowner within a radius of many miles enormously wealthy. Will you dig in your cotton patch and deprive yourself of the many luxuries, or will you cooperate in an effort to open up this great reservoir of oil? Our fathers rode in an ox cart and thought it was fine. You and I ride in automobiles and airplanes because someone had a vision for better things. One good well on that structure will be worth more to the citizens of your community than has all the cotton that has been raised in that community since the Civil War." As a wildcatter, Joyner's operation was not as sophisticated as those of large oil companies, but Joyner managed to raise some funds in Dallas and other cities by selling shares to investors. Many of those in Joyner's drilling crew were farmers and not professional drillers. Because Joyner was short on cash, he paid many of his crew in leases. Others had tried to dig for oil in East Texas to no success, but Joyner and Lloyd were convinced that they could find oil here. Following the advice of his friend, Doc Lloyd, Joyner began drilling on the Bradford property and dug for 6 months to a depth of 1,098 feet when the drill bit jammed. 2 months later, Joyner moved his wooden derrick and secondhand drilling equipment 100 feet northwest of his first site to begin drilling Daisy Bradford No. 2 in April of 1928. After 11 months of drilling and reaching a depth of 2,518 feet with no oil, operations were put on hold. Joyner then traveled to Houston to raise more funds, and while there, he hired a professional driller, E.C. Lasseter. The three men, Joyner, Lloyd, and Lasseter, began dragging their rig to another location after Lasseter convinced Joyner to abandon his second well. Skids were placed underneath the wooden derrick, and the rig was moved about 300 feet northwest of the original drill site. But after support for the derrick got caught on a rock and was damaged, the men were forced to stop. Having insufficient funds for repairs, the three men decided to try their luck and drill for oil where they had stopped. After drilling for over a year, the well had reached a depth of almost 3,600 feet. Lasseter performed a drill stem test and discovered that they had hit a strata which was saturated with oil and could be productive. Final preparations were made by Lasseter by purchasing new drilling equipment, and, finally, on October 3rd, 1930, Joyner's well blew in. Joyner's well made 3 heads, with the first head gushing oil over the top of the derrick. The well was then capped so that the oil could be transferred into storage tanks. Thanks to the success of the third well, a fourth well was dug on Daisy's farm, which produced about 5,000 barrels a day. Joyner's fortuitous discovery sat on the edge of what was then, at the time, the largest oil field yet discovered, the East Texas oil field. News of Joyner's discovery spread fast, and big oil companies and wildcatters rushed to the area to purchase leases of their own. Almost overnight, the value of the land skyrocketed, and leases near Daisy's farm reached as high as $2,500 per acre, which, adjusted for inflation, would be almost $44,000. Wells were dug in all directions around Daisy Bradford well number 3 to determine the size and scope of the oil field. Oil mania swept up the residents of Rusk and Gregg County as well, and this one small farming community left cotton fields unpicked as farmers became rich, leasing their now valuable land to prospectors. So many people rushed into the area that a local community south of the discovery well, originally called Miller, was renamed Joynerville. In the 1929-1930 school year, the local school had only 4 teachers. By the fall of 1931, the school had 20 teachers and over 800 students. During the peak of the boom, Joynerville had a population of around 1,500 people. By the way, you might see that a lot of these pictures contain written commentary. Many of the pictures in this video were taken by Jack Nolan, a photographer who documented the Texas oil boom in the first half of the 20th century. Kilgore, as well, saw a swell in population as the city became a hub for producing, processing, and servicing the growing number of businesses and people in the city. When the oil boom happened, Kilgore had a population of just under 500 people. The start of the Great Depression in 1929 had a negative effect on the city, and many businesses shut down and people left as a result. The boom caused the city's population to reach 12,000 people by the end of 1936. Thanks to the discovery of oil in the region, Kilgore was able to cushion itself from the worst effects of the Great Depression. Due to the population boom, Kilgore was incorporated in February of 1931. At the peak of the boom, there were over 1,100 oil-producing wells within Kilgore city limits. One plot of land in downtown Kilgore, 1.1 acres in size, had the highest concentration of wells anywhere in the world. There were 24 wells run by 6 different operators, earning it the nickname World's Richest Acre. With a sudden boom in oil production came a precipitous drop in prices. At the time Joyner's discovery well came in, oil was selling for about $1 a barrel. Unregulated overproduction of oil caused the price to fall down to under 10 cents a barrel. The governor of Texas, Ross Sterling, wanted to regulate the maximum extracted oil per day in order to maintain prices, reduce waste, and preserve the East Texas oil field. To that end, he ordered a limit, or proration, of allowed oil extracted per day. Operators of the well, however, largely ignored the proration order and continued to produce oil well over the set limit. Eventually, Governor Sterling ordered the Texas National Guard under General Jacob F. Walters to impose martial law and enforce the proration order. Interesting side note, General Walters happens to be one of the foremost experts on enforcing martial law, even writing a book about it. Still, even with martial law, oil continued to be extracted at over the set amount, and this oil, known as hot oil, was often sold out of state, for example to Louisiana. Finally, after a lot of legal battles between oil producers in the state of Texas, the federal government stepped in, and President Franklin Roosevelt signed an executive order on July 14, 1933. Even with the efforts of the federal government, hot oil continued to be extracted, and it wasn't until the passage of the Connolly Hot Oil Act of 1935 that authorities began to get a grip on the production of oil in East Texas. By the end of the decade, the boom had died down, and many independent operators were bought out by big corporations. The discovery of the East Texas oil field was very fortuitous because World War II would begin in 1939, and demand for oil and its refined products were in high demand. Luckily for the Allies, the United States produced enough oil, not only for U.S. war efforts, but for her allies as well. To this day, oil continues to be extracted from the East Texas oil field. By 1993, after more than 60 years, the East Texas oil field has produced more than 5 billion barrels of oil. There's even a pump jack at the original site of Joyner's discovery. As for Joyner, he was beset with legal problems soon after his discovery. Remember all those leases Joyner gave out in lieu of payment? Well, rightly or wrongly, people were trying to get a piece of Joyner's newfound wealth. Joyner sold his well and lease to Haroldson L. Hunt, founder of Hunt Oil Company, for $1 million and retired in 1940. He died in 1947 and is buried in Dallas. The oil industry has profoundly changed the history of Texas and continues to be an important industry in the state today. If you're interested in the history of the oil industry in Texas, or just Texas history in general, Kilgore and Odessa should be at the top of your list. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great day.